Working. Mom out, you don't give me a mom. Just turn it on. Turn it on, Buffalo.
He was making face.
To that,
Uh-huh.
and then we'll mute and unmute you from the control panel.
Oh, good
But I
Lord.
can leave it on.
Good day.
Everybody a microphone.
We'll just mute them all for now. Thank you.
Number 12.
It's on right now.
I hear it. I'm gonna make sure to turn off my phone.
Jenny, whenever you're ready to start streaming, let me know. Okay. We will go on and call the meeting to order. Good evening, and thank you all for coming together and joining us this evening. It's been a little while since we've had a chance to get together. There's been a lot that's gone on in the last 8 or 9 months or so, and I appreciate everybody coming out tonight so that we could have a work session and talk about the great things that are happening with McCarg and all the changes that are taking place. To look a little bit toward the future and to talk about some budget stuff. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Rob, to get us started. And I know you're going to call on Jack to probably give us a McCarg update.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that and appreciate everybody being here. We just got off spring break, so hopefully we're a little bit more refreshed than we were before we left. And I really appreciate Jack being here. He's spent the whole day down in Bristol and took him 3 hours to get back because of traffic. Before he presents, I do want to say that Carrie had planned to join me here tonight too, and her Sam broke his growth plate in his wrist and is in Roanoke Memorial Hospital right now trying to get that set back. So she wanted to let you know she was thinking about you, but she was with him. So Jack,
The floor is yours.
And it's Jack's birthday.
That's right.
Happy birthday.
Thank you for that. It's great to see everybody again, even though
If you want to take your mask off to do this, I think that's fine. That way we can be sure to hear you.
It is me. It's great seeing everybody again. As you say, Mr. Mayor, it's been a while since we've gotten together. Obviously, regular meetings with Mr. Graham and the other folks with administering the construction contract on McCarg, and I realize you have a lot of other important things to do tonight, so hopefully I can give you a good update in about 15 minutes and address any questions that you might have along the way here. So without further ado, we'll move into, and I just want to give you, all right, Jenny, which one am I doing? Am I on? There I am. But these are the things I want to cover. Just give you kind of a pictorial update of where things are, how we're moving along. You've all heard some about the Chimney Swift project. Just give you a little update on that. How COVID, some of the funding that's recently been allocated, some of that is being applied here as well. an update on the actual construction contract and schedule, and then the all-important budget review, and then what are our next steps here as we're moving ahead. So I got about maybe 10 photos of what's going on. Some of these, this actually is from January of this year, and I'm going to work my way through here, but what I want to impress upon you is that for the most part, most of McHarg, what we're using is the shell. I mean, there's a lot of changes that have taken place within the building, and I think this very quickly exemplifies that by the extent of trenching for new piping and removing of other work, and a lot of new openings and closing in other openings, that sort of thing. And kind of hard to make this out, but this is a trench down the main hallway right inside the front door. You can just barely make out a person standing here. And we were removing some of the previous ductwork that was underneath the floor. Some of it had some hazardous materials, and found some of it was constructed of cardboard. As they were excavating, just parts of the floor were caving in all around it. I'm surprised that it held up as well as it has. We've worked through that with solutions with the contractor, and it's all back in place at this point. But again, you never quite know what you're going to encounter in some of your renovation work. This is the portion of the building that's closest to 12th Street. That it was 2 opposing classrooms. I believe this was a 74 addition. Yeah, the 74 addition's all been opened up. This is where the library and media center and the small addition on the front will eventually be added on. But again, you can kind of go back to this. The floor there, when we removed the tile, all of the subfloor was coming up, where it's usually a thin set of about 1 inch. We were coming down over 3 inches in many areas. So again, some of the function of the age of the building and just being constructed at different times. Some newer photos here looking down one of the spines where the skylight's all exposed now, and we're going to be utilizing that pathway for new ductwork that will be exposed down through that hallway. It'll all be painted in accenting colors and that sort of thing. Should look very nice. Again, a lot of the walls all removed, new walls being installed. Significant trenching still taking place. This is just as of last week, the beginning installation of the courtyard area that's going to be outside the new 2nd grade wing. This is where the former little pond and gazebo was at one point. So site is really starting to shape up quite a bit. You can see here the beginnings of the new gymnasium. A lot of site utility work and grading has taken place. And I think one of the best ways to show you that is that I do have a 1-minute video, just a drone shot, quickly show you what's going on around the building. So if you want to throw that on real quick, Jenny, that'd be great. There's no sound to this. If you could expand that would be good. And you can get a good feel for what's happening. It's actually live, so you can see workers on this roof right here that are moving about. But take notice to the new entryway that's been cut in through the property here that's going to come in around the building. Extensive underground utility work's been completed in this area where the kindergarten wing's going to be constructed. They're ready to begin that. Here's that courtyard that I showed you the photo of, and we're about to start the 2nd grade wing through here. You can see the progress of the gym. And of course, everybody's been able to see the extent of grading on our sledding hill. And I'll go on record again, it will still have a sledding hill. Its profile may change a little bit and have a little bump out in it, but it's also been a holding area for a lot of the material that's going to be going back in. A lot of it came out of the new road, and a lot's going in where we're raising the grade in this area, the entry to the building. But that's also the area where the underground stormwater management is going to be installed. So you can see the whole site's being used. There's vehicles. We have staging areas in the rear. It's been a bit of an ant farm, I guess you could say, particularly from this height is what it looks like. And as everyone knows, it's been a pretty trying winter. with the weather that we have had, and, you know, trying to do a lot of subgrade utility work and just grading in general. And then, of course, we're not going to be getting much concrete work in sub-zero temperatures. So the weather has had an impact on it, but since things have broken in the last, say, 6 weeks, there's been pretty remarkable progress on the project as a whole. Here's a shot of what our hallways are looking like. You can see that some of the doorways are filled in, and others, new ones cut in, and what our final ductwork is going to look like going down through the spines of the building as a whole. I know you've already heard about the chimney suite project. Just to let you know, it's kind of been held up a little bit getting started because of the site utilities. They're now complete. They're supposed to be beginning foundations this Thursday on that, and they're projecting 2 weeks. I think that's, you know, kind of that standard cliche contractor reply, how long is it going to take? But I would hope that, you know, close to the end of the month that it will be completed. I'll touch on some of the funding related to this project too, as get towards the budget as a whole. But we did receive a proposal to do the initial design that we provided, about just over $13,000. That was the impetus for the fundraising campaign. Recently, there were some additions to that to provide power to this, and network connection for scientific study along the way, that sort of thing, and a few other modifications to the tower based on some input that Mr. Rankin got from some other expertise that was provided to him. So the current price for that work is looking at $17,000, a little bit more than that, and my understanding is that funding is in hand for all that through the outreach of the community and many other people. As everyone's been hearing, you know, the COVID funding's been issued, and there's been several iterations of that. You have the ESSER and the ESSER 2, and, you know, we've been figuring it out along the way too, to, you know, how those funds can be used. We've had a lot of interaction with the Department of Education, and, you know, anything essentially applicable to HVAC that's going to improve air quality is a good use of those funds. And then any other environmental improvements could also be applicable. So as a result of that, we did go back. We felt there was some roofs on the building that were essentially in R8 shape, but really near the end of their life. They couldn't make it in under our budget, were added to the project. I'll cover the cost of that a little bit, but also bipolar ionization was added to all the HVAC units, which is another recommended measure for to helping control any kind of allergen or you know, COVID in particular, you know, that may be airborne. So those have been added to the project. We're also understand it's possible, and I don't have a firm commitment on this yet, that some of the existing scope of work could potentially be applicable to some of this funds. Of course, it's not an unlimited end of these funds that are provided. And I know that there's other needs at the other school buildings that are currently being looked at too. But I do think that it may help manage the tight contingency that we've had on the project, because we have had some change orders here moving along on the project.
Where did the change orders come from?
Well, there are a number of things. We've also added funds to the overall because of related to the COVID, and then also the separate funding for the chimney project. But I mean, there's hundreds of different small things and a couple larger ones, and I'd say a majority are, you know, unforeseen conditions and things that have changed. I can tell you right now that there's still a pretty high number that are under consideration, and it's a somewhat confrontational process when we go through these things with the contractor back and forth, and, you know, you can't charge for that, that's already in the project, and there's certain assumptions here. So there's many that are currently under evaluation right now that are pending one way or another, and I will touch on that when I get to the budget. But you know, there's they've been a combination of site-related things as well as building, as we've uncovered things. And, we've had to reroute some things from how we thought we could do it because of obstructions that were uncovered. And, we've moved an air handler to the roof to allow a duct to not have to squirrel all around the place, those kinds of things of what would be expected, I think, normally. So real quickly, update on where we are in terms of the milestone dates to date. When I gave my last presentation to this group, I think it was August 24th, and authorized to move ahead under the understanding that we could achieve certain number of value engineering items that could get us to that $16,041,000 number, I believe it was. There were still some other things in flux, finalization of FF&E, the AVIT budget, those sorts of things. They've all gotten a little more firm here as we move forward. We were not able to come down exactly on that VE number, but other things were a little less than what we thought. And again, I'll update you on that whole thing. We did provide the date of the contract was the 3rd. Had a protracted process with the contractor resolving contract language back and forth with the school's attorney. Took about a month for that to finalize. The notice to proceed was given the same day that the contract was signed. They had permit in hand on the 8th, which wound up becoming what we expected, the substantial completion date. So we were pushing to get things moving there, but I'd say a solid month or maybe 6 weeks were lost there trying to get the contractor underway. Right now, the projections for substantial completion are not August, what we were hoping for. It is October. That is projected. It's not finalized right now. The contractor has submitted about 40 days to be considered that would be beyond that September 30th date. Our evaluation of that is that probably about half of that is justified. They need to be able to show that the delays that we have all experienced, and we admit that there have been justified ones with the weather, have impacted the critical path of the project. And plus, they need to take into account a certain number of days that would ordinarily be expected given the month based on NOAA produced data. So that's why I'm saying that we're expecting it somewhere in late October right now. And hopefully, if we can get substantial completion, we can begin some of the move-in work within November. But obviously, the things that are currently being used at Belle Heath would have to move over the Christmas break to be ready to go come January 2022. I was afraid this might be a little small. I do have some hard copies of this, though. I'll pass them out. Better give me one. So I'm having trouble reading that myself. Another birthday, I also need these. So let me walk you through this because it's in a format that you've seen over the last couple years, itemizing the various project components, beginning with the hard costs. And with each, as you recall, when we changed gears and we decided to break out some early packages, we included the cost for the temporary trailers. We had the separate package for selective demolition and the hazardous material. And all that was an effort to try to expedite the project as quickly as possible to make it very attractive for bidding purposes, and that contractors could get in there and kind of have the run of the building, the facility themselves. One thing that you see there up under pending is 4 additional months rental. That's not something that's been inked yet. we don't know, will it be 4 months or not? We still need to work through some of those things with the contractor, but I'm trying to identify all the costs that we're looking at. I don't think it would make sense to try to move into McCarg in October in the middle of the school year, but certainly it's not unusual to do something like that over a Christmas break, especially if we can get access to the building in November to start moving in the other items. Nutrient credits was a way to minimize the cost of on-site stormwater management. It's all been covered before, and you basically pay for that here, and the work is done somewhere else that impacts the New River storm shed. So
Where's the work being done with that then, since we're not doing it? I mean, some of it's on site, obviously. But
some of
where's
it
the
is
other-
on site. It's just the main large detention basins, and the biggest savings in that is not so much the first cost, it's maintaining them year after year kind of thing. So it would pale in comparison to that.
But we've not built another detention basin somewhere else, right?
No.
Okay.
Not above grade. There is some storage capacity that's going to be under the new parking lot, but there's no big basins anywhere. There's a temporary one out there right now.
Right.
On the hillside. But that will cover you there. The next line item is the general construction. That's the bid that we received. And if you recall, we also included in that contingency of $100,000 that was just allowing us to, expedite any changes that were necessary. So if I come down to the change orders to date, that very first one, that is the VE that we talked about and we identified early on. We were hoping we could get closer to $260,000. There were some changes back and forth. I think in the long run, we made out, we didn't have to get rid of certain things, but we were able to replace it with either a different manufacturer or slightly different quality. So that's what that first change order was, and that kind of kicked off the project. Since then, we've had 3 others. Change order 4 has not been fully executed by everyone, and you'll notice there's 2 asterisks there on 3 and 4, and they relate to what's down below because those 2 items included, number 3 included the work for the chimney, number 4 included the additional roofing, and those 2 items will be funded through that additional CARES Act funding. So it's not new money coming from the city to pay for those. So if we work our way down through the FF&E figure,
Before we go there, can we talk, what was change order 2, the 30,000?
there are a number of small things. I mean, it's not just one item. I mean, there's some credits in there. There's it's just a number of items. I mean, there could be 15 different items in change order 2.
Okay.
So if you see, like to date, percentage of construction costs, what those change orders amount to, it's under 1%, which, if you can do a project under 5, you're in pretty good shape. And we knew going in at a 3% that it was going to be pretty tight for a renovation project, but 3 is what was decided that we try to work with. The FF&E AV budget at 664, that's the most up-to-date number. That's actually lower by a little bit. I want to say about $73,000 than what was presented back in August. Soft cost has been updated to reflect exactly what the clerk of the works is, as well as the independent construction testing and inspection services from Schnabel Engineering. So that puts us at a total of $16,029, and the budget that was approved there in August was the $16 million number. So you subtract the 2, that only leaves us with $11,000 contingency, which is obviously not sustainable for the rest of the project, but, going back down and adding funds through a combination of the fundraising for the Chimney Swift project and then the other 2 items through the CARES Act, that kind of increases our budget from the $16,041,000 to $16,279 with, again, funds from COVID, CARES Act, and ESSER funds that were not from the city itself. And that brings us to a revised contingency of just under $250,000. However, pending change orders, right now, all that's shown there is the difference for the chimney for those other items that we added to it. We are in negotiation with Avis for a number of different change orders right now. We've gone back and forth with them. There's been a lot of issues with their site contractor, and again, that negotiating, arguing over, what should be in the project, what isn't in the project. But it's a number that I'd say it's close to $180,000 total that's being considered right now, primarily site-related items, but also interior-related items to the building. So that's not going to go too far as the remaining contingency on the project. So while I said earlier that it's possible that there are other COVID-related funds, I do think everybody just needs to be aware that we're tight with that contingency. We're not over the hump, I'd say, yet until I still want to see the walls coming up on the two additions before I feel more comfortable about where we are on that budget. I mean, a lot of the submittals have been made, a lot of obviously things have been uncovered in the building now, everything's open that needs to be open. So I can't say, if we knew what they were, we would have already identified them.
Then, due to some pending actions, we now are, where is our contingency
You
expected
mentioned
to be?
180.
What, that was the number, it was
No,
not,
yeah, the 180 number are potential additional change order.
okay,
That would be applied against that 249 number.
okay.
But, that's already been identified, they're being negotiated. I'm hoping it's less than that. Some of the ones that were submitted were flat out rejected. And it's a process. I mean, you all know what happens with, going through you've heard the stories of change orders with contractors, but, change orders aren't a terrible thing. They're a necessary part of construction, and they address things that, unforeseen conditions in particular. But also when you choose to add things to the project, there's a mechanism there to do that, such as adding the additional roofs and adding the bipolarization. So you don't have to go through that entire procurement process, but we were able to ensure that they're good figures that were being given to you for that work.
Those are great things. We're committed to those now, right? That's been built into the project, so that if the additional change orders and other things went over the total, you don't have that to go back to say, well, maybe we can't do the roofs now.
No,
Okay.
that's right. And again, that's coming from totally separate monies.
Okay.
They were, in fact, in that drone video, you could see they're actually working on one of those roofs that was part of that. So, and those were roofs, it was a hard decision what to include in the scope of work early on to try to meet things within the budget. And there's a lot of feedback with the schools and Paul Hale and, where there's been issues and not. And, there are still some areas of the school that have probably some of its more recent roofs that are in place and are going to remain there. They still have a little warranty left in them. So that's not
Yeah, because
part
we
of it.
just redid most of that roof 12 years ago, I think, something like that, right? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's the part that's not being done.
And so those quote-unquote 12 years ago, those were new additions, but
New were.
years old now, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you should be able to get a solid 20 years out of a roof like that. So, but I just, renovation work's tough. There's more out there. I still think even with that 180 that we're still within a relatively low percentage of what typical change orders might be on a project like this. And we'll continue to be diligent and review and make sure nobody's paying more than should be paid for these items. But we're trying to be responsive and keeping the project moving forward too.
Thank you. Did you have any more, or is that it for you?
Let's see, well, that's the other part that you couldn't see. Just real
Okay.
quickly, just wrap things up here with what to expect and when. Just particularly for the school board here, the different areas of the building, and, the north side of the building is along 12th Street there, and what our schedule for completion is. All these are really going to be from August into October, and this is all based on the most recent projected schedule from the contractor. Again, we've not approved a date of end of October yet, but everything's pointing that way. There'll be some negotiating with them, but with the additional work and getting the late start, it's not looking like anything that's going to be a liquidated damages claim, for the $500 a day. I think we'll all admit that a certain amount is justified. And again, I don't think it's recommended, nor does anyone want to move into this building in the middle of an active school year. But you can see there the various areas of the buildings are tied in, obviously, with the area around the exterior. The thing that's going to probably take the longest will be the closing out the site along the entryway and this rear parking lot loading dock, because as construction finishes, they're going to kind of work their way out of the site that way. But it's a very detailed construction schedule, many pages and bar charts and so forth, and it's something that's reviewed at every progress meeting that we have bi-weekly with the contractor. And then the other little things that, well, they're not little, but the other project components and looking ahead, we're feeling good about where we are in terms of their budget. Most of those items have been identified. The schools are issued purchase orders for many of these things, so I'm not concerned about lead times, even though here we are in COVID, you hear a lot about supply chains and so forth. A lot of that has already been, it's not purchased yet, but we have the time frame to have it, and we're looking at, that late October, early November installation for these items here. So I feel good. We're staying out in front of that to not push the schedule back any further, but we've not heard any other impact related to ordering timeframes. I mean, a lot of FF&E items sometimes could be as much as 3 to 4 months. We certainly have that buffer in our schedule right now. I think you've all heard the other impact that COVID has had now, both in terms of steel and wood, and there's crazy prices on things, and we are being impacted by that a bit with some of these change orders. We've rejected one that the contractor came forward and said, well, my steel prices have gone up $50,000, and we said, well, we gave you a notice to proceed in September before they went up. If the reverse were true, would you be coming to us with a credit right now? So, those are kinds of things that we've been dealing with, and really trying to as a, our fiduciary responsibility to you to review those things. So that is it.
Okay. I don't know, school board, you all have seen some of this update, right? So do you have questions? I mean, we can go around council. We start, Naomi, do you have any questions you can think of?
I don't think so. It seems like the takeaway is just the razor thin margins that you all are operating under. So I appreciate all the efforts that you're doing to, grab every single penny where you can, because I can see how tight this really is when we're looking at these contingencies. So thank you.
Forrest?
Yeah, no questions, but do appreciate the thoroughness.
Onassis?
Yeah, it's more for David Ridpath. Do you foresee any additional funding coming forward due to the last stimulus package for this project?
The schools are getting the CARES Act money, correct?
Jesse?
Yes, the question, let me turn on.
Is your light on?
There you go. No, I turned it off so everyone wouldn't have to hear me cough. So I know when we had discussed this budget, we were concerned that we could run into some areas of concern in regards to cost. We also had identified several ways to drive those costs down to remain within budget. We were looking at furniture, flooring, et cetera. So as we sit in this project now, what are those factors that we have to maneuver and to work with to remain within this budget?
I'm not aware of new things that haven't been considered. Actually, there is one thing. We're working with Chris Childress right now about the possibility of a variance on a portion of the sprinkler system. The code requires a dry pipe system on the outside portion where those overhangs are. Kind of not really necessary, but it's an interpretation thing. So that should result in a small credit. Most of the items we thought of early on were in that $260,000 that we talked about on August 20th. Some of that included removing portions of the better flooring type. We were able to go back with them and actually get a different manufacturer and still have a good quality floor there that would not be an issue for maintenance and durability over time. So the net result of that kind of horse trading there, that a lot of that took a good part of that month of September, was what amounted in that $226,000 change order. And that was a credit back to the project to drop it down to that approved budget number. The FF&E figure did drop. I want to say that $30,000, somewhere in there. There were some other additions that were determined made more sense to include those now than to try to get something later that would never really match. The AVIT figure was $70,000 less, and there's a lot of horse trading involved with that with providers, and we were able to get a really good price on Promethean boards through further negotiation that Rob and his staff did with that. So, all those areas that we identified, I think we've looked at and turned over all those stones to get as much as we felt could be gotten. We're squeezing it pretty tight.
$46,000 on security equipment because we were able to take some of the cameras that were in McCarg already and reuse them again. So we saved about $46,000 on that. We had a Primo audio enhancement system in each of the classrooms, which would help all of our students hear better. And we also had video included in that too.
Okay.
That was very expensive, so we took the video part out, but we kept the audio enhancement. And I can't remember, Jack, how much that saved, but it was a fairly large amount.
That was all accounted for in that net number of $73,000 savings.
So can you get into a little more detail about the additions?
Which addition?
You were mentioning that it made sense to do some additions opposed to waiting till later.
I guess the biggest thing that comes to mind is the kindergarten furniture, because currently there's 4 classrooms of active kindergarten, but there's 2 additional ones. And do we want to have the furniture? I mean, it's not a huge amount. It's like $15,000 in the grand scheme of things, but however much in the future, you're not going to have that same buying power that you would have now through these economies because of how much is being bought. And certainly the likelihood of getting the exact same furnishings would be slim.
Preschool too.
Right, preschool.
So you're taking advantage of the bulk buying right now.
Absolutely.
And some of the things, Jesse, we don't have any, like that trench that you saw. We weren't expecting to see that trench to have to be so deep in order to be able to manipulate it like it needs to be to provide safety. So that's a type of change order that we would receive. That's a pretty significant amount of money that we don't have any control over.
Right.
I mean,
it's hard to
absolutely none.
preconceive that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's another one that came in today, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but through their negotiations, well, there were 2. One was the freight towards the furniture, which they were trying to negotiate to give us a better deal on, and the other one was they had negotiated with Avis in order to take off, I can't even remember what it was, but it was something for windows and those types of things to give us a credit on that as well. So they are negotiating for us.
We're
every day.
looking at every little thing, we really
Good.
are. So.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
When Jesse asked some of the questions that I had about where we could find some additional things, are we pretty much at the point of no return with the FF&E as far as if we run way over, having to revisit that to see what we can do, or is that pretty much a done deal?
There's still a PO that's been issued on that just to get it ordered.
We have CARES money that can help us, but we have to also realize that if we use CARES money for the McHarg project, which we had not anticipated, we didn't know we were going to get CARES money, and thank goodness we did. But if we use that CARES money, then we already have priorities set aside for what that CARES money has come to. And if we have to use that, then we'll just have to take another one of our projects away and do it at a later date. So we do have some money, but we were hoping to use that for other projects too.
I understand, and I just speaking on the part of the taxpayers too, we're at 16 million, that's kind of what we have, it's kind of like that's the size of the bag of money, and then we gotta make it all fit in there. I appreciate you fighting the good fight, please continue to do that, and I know that you really care about this project and try to get it in at a high quality with the best price that we can possibly get, and definitely keeping that in mind that, thank goodness for some of the money that's coming from the federal government to help us through some of these things, because it's definitely tight. I don't have any additional questions about the CART project. Does anybody else have anything that they wanted to ask? Okay, thank you, Jack, and happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right, Rob, can you talk to us about this virtual regional academy? I'm excited, but I really don't know much about it.
So one of the things that, and Jack, thank you, and thank you folks for everything too. I just have to let you know there's not a day that I go up there that there's not somebody from Thompson and Lytton up there helping and supporting, so very grateful for that. But the Region 7 Virtual Academy is something that came about from, you all know well that we partner with a company called Virginia Virtual right now, and they provide online learning platforms for students who don't want to choose the public school system route. And they give us some money in order for us to have slots for them as students enrolled in Rapid City. They're a Rapid City school student, but they're away in a different county. So we have partnered with the school board, decided that we would partner with them this year because we are able to bring in money with that company at 5.5% per student. So it ends up being about $400,000 that we're getting extra in order to have this partnership. So we've had great success with them. Myself and the Bristol superintendent really had discussed a lot about what can we do in order, because one of our biggest worries and why we went with Virginia Virtual was the loss of enrollment that we had due to COVID, because a lot of our children in Radford decided to go to homeschool, decided to go to some other correspondence. In fact, 12 of them went to Virginia Virtual, and before we had partnered with them, that would have been close to $100,000 of lost income that we would have had, and worse, we would have lost those children. So we were able to partner with them and get that money back in addition to the 5.5% fee that we get for each child. So we knew we didn't want to have the loss of enrollment. We knew we didn't want to have the loss of our students. And we found out throughout the year too that these platforms that we're are expecting our teachers to teach on, whether it's hybrid or 4 days a week or 3 days a week, or our children coming 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, it was just, are we teaching asynchronously? Are we teaching synchronously? It was just wearing them out. So both the superintendent in Bristol and I got together and tried to figure out, is there something that we can do to make this better for everybody? And he's part of a rural and small school coalition that we are too. And we thought that we would try to develop something like that. So we went and talked to Stride, the company that we work with, Virginia Virtual, and said, how would you like to be the provider of online instruction for all the children in Region 7? And they said they would absolutely love that. They were losing a contract that they had with Richmond City, which had about 10,000 kids. We have about 15,000 in Region 7. So we got them on board, And once we got them on board, the wheels started spinning, and we had multiple companies, online companies, talking to us. So initially, when we started with them, well, let me back up a second. We were going to do this on our own, which was going to just be impossible for us to do. Plus, it was going to cost us about $4,000 a child to do this out of our $6,000 or $7,000 ADM. So luckily, when we worked with them, and then we started having competition from other vendors too, we were able to get that price down to $2,000 is the lowest that we've gotten so far. So we're able to have a virtual regional academy with 3 providers, Virtual Virginia, Edgenuity, and Virginia Virtual, for 14 divisions. Right now, we feel like that's going to move up to 17 or 18 divisions, that we will be able to provide one of the most robust online platform for those students who do not want to choose in-person learning, because that's the fact, you all, we're going to have virtual learning. There's going to be students who want to do virtual learning. We have students in Radford who are very successful with it. We have students in Radford who are not successful with it and need to be in person. But that's kind of how that came about. Now, the $144,888 that you see down there is a $10,000 buy-in from each of our divisions. In addition to the money that, if you go with Stride, you'll get that 5.5% administrative fee. Edgenuity and Virtual Virginia do not provide non-residential placements. But in going with Edgenuity and Virginia Virtual too, they're going to provide $50,000 each to our curriculum instruction program that's throughout Region 7 too, so $100,000 a year for that. So, you know, we're really excited about that. We feel like that we have an outstanding opportunity here. It's a program that is being viewed by many other regions and asking, you know, can they come aboard? What can they do? We've worked with the Virginia Department of Education. They've been great. That's their Virginia Department of Education's program is Virtual Virginia, but we're leaving it up to the divisions to choose what platform they want to do. We've had so much success with Stride. We're going to use that. We also have had students who use Virtual Virginia too, so we'll have that platform as well. We won't partner with Edgenuity. They're more of a credit recovery type of program, and we have a grant for credit recovery called APEX, it's under Project Return.
So this sounds amazing. Thank you for doing this. I think this is a wonderful project. I think this is exciting. I'm sure you all are excited on the school board. I'm still a little confused with the money, where, you know, if it's coming in, when you say $400,000, I'm assuming that's once it's up and running, and that might be an upper end of what could be expected as part of this, or is there a range, or? So we, according to the formula that they have, we are allotted about 1,100 slots. Okay.
We don't really want to go to that full threshold, because if we have students who come back, that impacts the local effort that you all have too. So we don't want to do that. So we'll probably ask for 1,000 slots. Out of that 1,000 slots, we get a 5.5 administrative fee for each child, guaranteed, no matter whether they drop out or not. This year we had 1,000 slots too. We're down to 715 students. So you take that 715 students, and each student in Radford is about $7,000. You take that $7,000 and multiply it by 5.5%, and that's how much you get for each child. So that ends up being, this year, close to $350,000 to $400,000. Next year, it's guaranteed that they give us 1,000 slots, then we get that amount of money in cash in October.
Is that restricted as to how you can use that money?
No, it's not.
So is that primarily going back into running the program, or is that
No.
money that it can be used? Again, just spitballing here, if the project overruns at McCard by $100,000, that's money we could potentially use at McCard. Or if there's some other issue, that's money you can use in another way.
That money is right now going to be allocated towards our capital outlay fund, because we are as low as we've ever been. And that's one of the reasons that and the board, one of the board's priority is teacher raises. And that helped us give the raise that we want to give this year too. But a lot of that is going to, we're down to $700,000, $750,000 on our capital outlay fund from up to $3.2 million. Gosh, that was not even 5 or 6 years ago, I think. I mean, it was $3.2 million in my second year as a superintendent. So, you know, we've dropped and are worried. You know, we have to maintain, we don't have that $400,000 debt service from Bell Heath in our budget at all. and we want to keep it that way. We want to be able to pay that out of our carry forward money.
This sounds like a good piece. Is there a minimum number of students that have to be a part of it for it to be a go?
No, it's going to be a go no matter what. For those divisions that want to use Virginia Virtual, we have to have 5,000 non-resident students in Region 7 in order to get that $2,000 fee for our students to be taught by Virginia Virtual. Edgenuity and, let's see, I think Edgenuity is $2,650 per student, and then Virtual Virginia is $2,000 at the secondary level and almost $3,000 at the elementary level. But the one thing that the board and I like about Stride too is they have 20 years of experience in dealing with K through 12 online education. So we'll take those 1,000 non-resident students and they'll take our however many that come in and educate them for $2,000, and we get the rest of that too. So we're kind of winning on both ends.
That's great.
Yeah.
I have a ton more questions, but I want to open it up to everybody else. I don't want to dominate the floor. Council, Naomi, do you have any questions?
I have more questions than I think that I know even how to express about what's going on with this program. You just said so much, so I'll let you take the floor and go, and I can get filled in later.
Jesse?
Yes, so just like out of curiosity, so I get a visual of this. So with the virtual academy, is it similar to an extension of sort of the training that we were able to provide to the students during COVID? So is it teacher-driven? Do we have teachers hired to do this? Or is it like the Apex, I know, which is more program-driven?
Well, it's a little combination of both. So our children that choose to be remote next year will not be taught by a Radford City School teacher. They'll be taught by a K through 12 educator that's a licensed Virginia teacher.
Okay.
That may have been a Radford City employee at one time. Most of those folks in Stride right now, well, the principal of, or I'm sorry, the superintendent of Stride is one of board members in Fauquier County and has ties to Southwest Virginia. The principal of Stride is Kenny Moles, who graduated from Auburn. The testing coordinator is Brian Kitts. He used to be the principal at Blacksburg High School. So we have a lot of ties to Southwest Virginia with Stride, which is also another reason that we decided to choose them.
So with us doing this, is there concern that other localities and school districts might want to take this on as well? Or once we do it in an area, are we the ones defined as that provider?
Ask me that again, I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
Sorry.
That's okay.
So, you know, we're looking at Region 7, for example. So if there's another school district that sees what we're doing in that region and they say, hey, we want to get on board too.
So in all our agreements, now I see what you're saying.
Right,
You
perfect.
You cannot steal,
Okay.
you cannot, it's a non-compete. You
All right.
You can't steal.
I like that too, good.
No.
All right, perfect.
We were taking,
Yeah,
we had 54 of their students.
Okay.
and they're still very supportive of this.
Oh, the whole region's very, I don't know if you all know the magnitude of what it would take to create an online academy in Region 7 there's only 19 superintendents in Region 7, and to try to take that on with hiring, funding, curriculum, I mean, it's just impossible.
And
we're
so I'm
lucky.
thinking, like, if I'm another school district and I'm losing 150 kids to this program, how are they feeling about that? How are relations? They're still good with that?
They're going to choose that platform anyway.
Okay.
Stride has, now Edgenuity, this is a little bit new to them. As far as the full-time remote, they're more of like an Apex.
Yeah.
But for Stride, they've been in business for 20 years. So they have, last year they had almost 14,000 online students. And this year so far, their registration is far better than it was last year. So they're going to go with with the companies they want to go to. It's not like we're stealing their students, but they do need spots in order to be considered a multi-online provider.
Okay, I love this. How did this vision take place? How did this happen? You guys saw a gap and then started filling it?
We really didn't want to lose our students. We didn't want to lose the ADM for our students. I think I told you all at one time we'd had almost 100 students that weren't enrolled, and for that, I mean, you take 100 students times the $7,000 ADM.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And then we really the impact on our teachers this year has just been devastating, and this will allow them to focus on in-person instruction and allow our partners to focus on online instruction.
Okay, thank you, that's all I have.
I know you got a lot of irons in the fire right now, but if there was a way to get a white paper on this for us to be able to understand more, because I think that's the thing, it's like drinking from the fire hose to try to understand all this. It sounds wonderful. Is there a minimum contract we have for this? Is it a
2 years.
two-year contract? So starting this fall and going through the fall of 2023?
For the two
Or
private, you have
spring of
to understand that there's 2 private providers and 1 public provider.
Okay. Okay.
So for the 2 private, we have to sign an agreement. For the 1 public, we do not have to sign an agreement.
Okay, so we've got that agreement. So again, I'm thinking budget-wise as we look at this, because one of the questions I had, and I do want us to take time, so we may run over a little bit as we talk through budget a little bit, is sustainability and budgeting. And looking at that piece and looking at this piece, this is great. This is wonderful to have as a new opportunity for people, a great way to help our kids do better, but also from a revenue perspective to be able to fund those things that are priorities. After that 2 years, how confident do you feel like this is going to be a stable program to move forward? I know that's looking in a crystal ball a little bit, but are you seeing a lot more competition rise around this type of thing, or?
Oh, gosh. David, you wouldn't be amazed at how many people have reached out to us. Edmentum, Odysseyware, Pearson Learning, Pearson. I mean, it just.
But you don't feel like they will try to go around us and directly to the
I'm
student, that they
sure they
will still
will.
involve the school district?
I think that's why we're trying to do it.
Okay.
I think we're trying to show them that we want to partner with them, but we also have to have support from the VDOE to do this, because families want choice.
Right.
I mean, they really want choice. They don't. If we just threw out Virtual Virginia to them, I don't think that we would have as much success as if we had partners. There's a lot of wonderful online platforms that children use and families are comfortable with.
Right.
And we just have to embrace that and move
Okay.
on.
Okay, well, again, anything you can give us that would help us understand this more fully. I have a better picture of what it is now. There's still a lot I don't really understand with it and how it's working so well for us.
So,
It looks amazing.
Let me, thank you. We do have a board. Dr. Ray serves on the board for us for Radford City, and it's comprised of all the members of the organization, and everybody in Region 7 is part of it except Scott County and Dickinson, and there's 3 others that aren't part of it, but it is a formal board. So we are regional, and we just submitted our application to become a full regional academy to the BDOE, and we will hear April 22nd. So
Okay.
let us finalize all that, and I'll send
Perfect.
you all the
No, that's
information that
great.
we have.
Appreciate that. Let's talk budget real quick. We have your budget and we have some numbers. Do you want to share any thoughts with us as we go into this, or?
Have you all reviewed all this? I mean, I can go through with it if you
I
would
think
like
we have
to.
questions, but I wanted to give you a chance to talk about anything you wanted to talk about before we go from there.
Well, I mean, I'd like to just thank the board. They've been very, very helpful. I would love to hear me thank her again, because she just does such a wonderful job with everything here. We were just really pleased at what came through with the General Assembly's budget, and had no idea we were going to see the state funds and receipts like they were. So you can see on the left side with the expenditures where we added more than we thought we would. And the only thing that I would direct your attention to before you ask questions is the health insurance increase estimate there of $40,000. We got those back. It's no increase to our employees at all, so that we'll take that $40,000 and move it somewhere else. But we are involved in discussions with our consultant, insurance consultant, because we're considering 3 other options. We did an RFP 2 weeks ago, and we're working with IAG to decide, do we want to stick with BPA Best Life? Do we want to move to local choice again, or do we want to move to Optimal Health? So, but
Well, and at some point, and I was just going to broach this at some point in time, do you ever want to pursue coming under the umbrella together with the city? I know there's some big costs to get there, but would it make sense to be on a multi-year plan to try to do that with the savings that you might experience with some of those packages?
And David was wonderful to reach out to me and say, come, let's look at this together. It just didn't work out this year, but I think that we're going to continue to do that, right? And see, that would be a goal of ours, I think.
And I think it would give more stability to all the packages all the
Yeah.
way around, so that you guys maybe wouldn't have to go through this every year, too.
Yeah, but we do want to go through it, because we don't want to
Sure.
incur an increase of
Huge cost.
15 to 20%, which
Right.
really would hurt us.
Okay. Anything else you want to share?
I'll answer any questions that,
Yeah, I was going to say, council, what questions do you have about school board budget? Anything? Naomi, Forrest, Onassis, Jesse?
Surprise. All right, so one question that I have on this is, with the CARES money, I'm sure you're watching what we're doing when we're doing the city budget. We are not utilizing the money that we think that we're going to receive as a part of our standing budget. We are reconcile our budget based on the money that we can count on and depend upon, not those one-time potential assists. Is there anything that is reoccurring in your budget that you're going to be utilizing CARES money for that later we'll have to address?
we have one school nurse to be paid with CARES funds, but we put that position in there just because of the pandemic. So we don't know.
Would you maybe not have that position then?
I don't know now. It's been very nice to have.
Right.
But I think we could, if things are as good as that they're projected to be this year, next year, I think we could take that over in our budget.
Okay.
But I don't know if we, it's been wonderful having that, and we haven't really seen the true impact of how that can happen because we haven't had all our children and still don't have our other children in. But I can tell you right now, it's been nice having her at the middle school and nice having an RN in every school. But we wouldn't consider using CARES funds for that until, unless just during the pandemic.
Because you can use CARES fund both this year and in the 22-23 year,
We
correct?
can use ours until 2024.
Okay.
And so I know, I'd watched your meeting. I know one thing you have is a new bus.
The new bus.
I know that's huge. That's a big one. What else are you guys looking at with the CARES? I heard you mention that, there's potential if the budget goes over on the build, but what else are you guys looking at with the CARES?
So the priorities right now, and again, we're working with Thompson and Litton on this, and Jack and Dan and Erica are heavily involved, but the priority is air conditioning in the cafeteria and kitchen, air conditioning in the Arnheim house, and various other upgrades because we run out of space. So it'd be nice to use that, and that's a wonderful building. Air conditioning in the gymnasium, renovation in the locker rooms. Our tennis courts need to be looked at again after 12 years of being resurfaced. Let's see what else. Board members, you help if stadium. Yes, resealing the stadium and then the track, looking at that, and then maybe putting some turf on the practice field. And then the science classrooms. Oh, yeah, science classrooms, and yes.
So tell me
So
a
many
little
of
bit
the
about
projects that were on your capital list before.
We went by the study that we did. I'm sorry.
So the science rooms were always
Yes.
under my craw a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, I felt like there was a lot that we needed to improve upon with those, so I'm thrilled to hear that. Can
Yes.
you give us an idea of some of the things that you're going to be improving upon?
That would probably be a pretty extensive renovation of those 5 rooms. So I don't know if you've been in there and you've toured. So we would rip out all it would look a lot more modern, and it would have areas not only just for labs but for collaboration, for active learning, those types of things. So it would be
Working burners and...
yes, all that.
Yeah.
And when I mean out labs, I mean anything from using a Bunsen burner to dissecting a lamb's brain.
Okay. I'm very glad to hear about that.
Did you do
So, I mean, not the dissecting, just so you all know, not that part. Look, as you all know me well enough to know I'm not cheering for that per se. Yes, that did not come out well. Okay, so that's good. And now I did notice in your meeting, you guys are looking at a 6% minimum increase in salary and a 10% on the high end of that. So how is that? How are you guys going to be looking at funding that?
This year, so if you look on your second page of that document, because we didn't give a raise last year or this year, we had $563,000 that we could use towards putting that. We were going to give a 3% this year, and we are going to give a 3% last year, so we're able to do both.
Okay, and so then for the ongoing years, when you don't have that money set aside, how are you looking at funding that?
Through the through what we just talked about, through the Region
So you're gonna
7
look at-
Virtual Academy.
And so then our hope is after 2 years that we still have that, because if not, then there could be a budget deficit.
I don't know what to expect in the future, Jesse, to be honest with you, but one of the folks that I'm working with in Alabama too, that was part of Stride, they were, after the first 2 years, they were making about 1.5 off of their partnership with Stride. So if we're able to do that, we're gonna be able to do a lot of things.
Okay.
And that's the intent, is to try to really give our teachers at least we want to stay competitive. We have a wonderful staff. We want to give our teachers at least a 3 to 5% raise each year.
And so now I know that the state was looking at 5%. Where are we with that?
5% with just SOQ positions over the 2 years.
Okay, so that's still built in. That's not, so the 6 and 10 is on top of whatever that would be.
Yes.
An additional 1 and 5,
Yes.
1 to 5%.
Yes.
Okay.
How is that determined, where some people may get a 10% raise and other
It's
people are getting
so
6?
it's just on the scale that we have not tackled until this year, and we have that on the next agenda to look at again and possibly approve. So we went from having a bunch of different percentage increase on the salary scale to now having about, it's close, you can never going to have it exactly consistent, but it's about it's either 1.5 or 2.5% now. So they would get that as they moved up a step.
So I was just looking at seeing where the increases are that are going to be reoccurring. So I notice, we have, of course, the salaries, a potential nurse. We'll have to kind of wait for how this all pans out. I understand that. You were also looking at an additional 6% for someone who gets a master's degree now, to add that in as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how many new positions are we going to have with this next budget?
So if you go down there, you'll have the 3-year-old preschool teacher, which is mostly funded by VPI funds, Virginia Preschool Initiative funds. The elementary reading teacher is going to be funded by the Title, it'll be a partnership of Title I and local funds. Preschool route bus driver, we have to fund that locally. Regular route bus driver, we have to fund that locally. A high school guidance counselor, that's $11,000 to move. I mean, that's not a lot to fund locally. Assistant principal and DDOT, we were able to do with the increase in the state funds and receipts that we saw, and we had a need for that. Plus, we have Tara doing DDOT and being the principal of 2 schools right now, and it's too much. It's too many hats to wear. She's doing a wonderful job, but it's just too stressful. We always have wanted to put an assistant principal in each of our schools, so we were able to do that at McCarg. And then we were able to do some of these things too, because we had some experienced staff members who had retired, and we were able to save some of their money
Okay.
too.
I guess my main concern with the budget is I just want to make sure that, that it's able to be balanced basically with reoccurring money that we can count on. That's my only concern, is we look at the CARES money as, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to take on some of those things that we need, like we've, had some vehicles, some police vehicles, the bus. This is a great opportunity for us to kind of catch up on some things. But I just want to make sure, because there is so much uncertainty with our economy, I just don't want to get us into a position where we have overpromised in this budget what we can continue to do. So even though it's flush this year, what we have to make sure, and what we rely on you guys for, is to make sure that when that CARES money is not there in 2 years, when we don't have a crystal ball. So without having a crystal ball, we have to plan on the worst case contingency in this particular situation. So I guess my question to everyone is, if we're not relying on the Virtual Virginia program, if we're not relying on CARES money, is this budget sustainable in the future without an increase?
So the only thing on here that's a reoccurring cost that's paid for out of CARES is a school nurse, and we did that because we were in a pandemic and felt like we needed it. So
Right, I get that.
And the only thing that helped a little bit in teacher raises was the money we're going to receive from Virginia Virtual, but most of that money is going to carry forward. So everything that you see on here, with the exception of the school nurse, is locally funded,
So
locally and state and federally funded.
Is that a permanent increase, though? I mean, as far
It
as we
just
know?
depends
Or is
on-
that a bump now that then they may adjust down later? That's what I assumed
You
it
you
was,
never
because
know.
that's what I thought.
They
was it was
won't
gonna
adjust
be
down. If you saw those latest figures, when you look at the average salary of teachers compared to the average salary of employed individuals in Virginia, of employed professionals, just came out, Virginia ranks 50th.
Well, and let me be clear, no one is saying the teachers are not deserving. We had the same conversation when we're looking at increases because the city had to still function too. And we wanted to give them a lot more than what we could, but again, to reconcile the budget and to be fair to the taxpayers in very uncertain times, we couldn't give everyone what we felt they deserved. Not because we don't appreciate their contribution during tough times, but because this is an obligation that was going to go forward for years to come on our taxpayers, again, who are struggling, and I can tell you, because of even what we've had to see with helping people with their electricity right now, there's a lot of families in crisis.
I know.
So all I'm asking, and I want to hear, yes, Jesse, we can guarantee this. That's what I really need out of this budget.
And if we have to, 5 years down the road, if virtual Virginia
We're talking 2
doesn't
years.
happen,
Grants change, they're not all on the same. they're
Right,
not all on the
but
so
we have a
so here's the
2-year
thing.
agreement on this.
We have always made changes when we've had to make changes.
I just
Okay.
don't want to get in a situation that in 2 years, that we're having to eliminate positions that we've just hired or decrease salaries. And so I'm being very honest with you guys because I expect the same from you. This budget has to be able to carry on in 2 years, flush.
Right.
That's what we expect. We've invested, when I say we, I'm saying taxpayers. We invested in this new build because we are dedicated to improving our school system. But we can only take on so much. We have an Achilles heel here in the middle of, a pandemic. So all I'm asking from you guys, and again, I'm in the unique position of sitting in your shoes, so I get where you're coming from and you're advocating for the teachers too, and heaven knows I've advocated the same as you have, but I also have to advocate for the taxpayers in that process. So what I'm asking you guys is, can you say to me, and I guess to you too, in 2 years, knowing what we've built into this budget, are we going to be able to sustain it if we don't have CARES money to depend upon? And if we don't have
using
the
CARES money
virtual?
for this budget.
I don't think, Jesse,
Okay,
we
I'm
could,
just, so then,
so let me try to
I
answer
just
that.
want to hear yes, because then in 2 years when this comes up, I'm going to be able to say,
Jesse,
we're on record.
may I say something?
Sure.
Based on what we would expect for the same level of funding that you all have graciously done so in the past, I will give you the yes. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
I want to amend that a little bit, though.
So, and I agree. I think I know where you're coming from because there's only so much. We don't have a crystal ball, and
We
I
don't-
get that.
If we are hit with a pandemic again and schools have to close and folks choose different choices and we go from, right now, 1567 down to 1100,
I agree.
we're going to have a real difficult time.
And in all fairness, I mean, I'm not holding you to that level of accountability for the
For
public
this
health.
year, our goal right now.
These are sizable bonuses, and, so here's what I'll say. What we've kind of talked about on a city scale, to be fiscally sound and conservative, we've talked about increasing salaries a certain percentage, what we would like to do. And what we've come up with here is, even though we know and understand there are long-term benefits to doing that, we also understand that we don't understand totally long-term ramifications. So we're not giving, at this point, I think where we've lowered kind of where we're at and giving a raise, but we are looking at building in a bonus because we understand that they have had to work under extremely trying times. So instead of looking at 5%, and now we're looking at a 6 and 10% on top of that, which is wonderful if we can sustain it. But have you considered raising it maybe at a lower rate, and this year giving a bonus, and then let's readdress this when we have more clarity on some of the things that we all agree we don't have a crystal ball on. Would you consider, looking at that?
I'll tell you what we do have a crystal ball on, and I don't think people understand how dire this situation is. No one wants to be a teacher. And Pulaski County has positions they cannot fill. They've got like half of their positions in special ed are provisionally licensed people with one course in special ed. Montgomery County cannot fill their positions. Over half of their
How are we
special-
doing on positions?
We're pretty good, aren't we? I
We're
mean,
pretty
No,
good.
Well,
but-
okay, so,
let
But
me-
Radford's not, our programs aren't graduating people.
We have also lost more teachers and administrators this year than we ever have. I mean, we have spent the entire year hiring and hiring
well,
and hiring.
and I will
It's just-
say, we've seen turnover in a lot of different, I think, high-stress jobs that happen to be on the front lines of COVID. So
Yeah.
I understand that.
Yeah.
It's been stressful, trust me. I get where you're coming from. It's stressful on the city side of things, trying to maintain a city as well.
Sure.
So again, the argument for me isn't how deserving they are, and I agree with you on everything you're saying, but we can't just advocate just for just the schools. We have to advocate for an entire community, and the schools are a huge priority, and we've made those investments, and we've put, we've put our money basically as a city where our mouth has been. So we're doing a school. I'm just suggesting right now, is this sound going forward based on the fact that we don't know? And I agree with you. I think I'm more in line with the superintendent on this. I think there's so much that we don't know right now. And so all I'm suggesting is, what we're doing as a city is, we're looking, I think, at 3.5% is what I think we're getting closer to. We're looking at providing a one-time bonus to say, hey, we acknowledge what you've been through. We do have some additional funds this year to be able to warrant that. But we also have no idea what we're going to look like in the next year or two. And we don't know if there's going to be another round of this, with all. So all I'm saying is we just all need to work together for the taxpayers to be as conservative and thoughtful right now fiscally as we can be. And if you guys are all looking at me and saying, hey, in 2 years, we're going to be fine, we're going to be able to sustain all this, then I'm like, okay, then go for it. But don't expect, because we don't know where we're going to sit as a city, that we're going to be able to fund these increases for you.
I think we're all on the same page with that. Every single city council member, board of supervisors, all over the state, all over the country, want to do the same thing. None of us know where this virus is going to go.
I agree.
We're all on the same page with that. All things being equal, as we are right now, what we have right now, we are a leader in this region. Mr. Graham's not going to say it, but Mr. Graham is he's turned to often. What are we going to do? What do we want to do? He's constantly leading our region. We want the best, we want the brightest for our kids. In order to do it, we're going to have to pay it. Can I tell you 2 years from now that we're not going to have to lay somebody off? I can't promise you that.
Okay.
I
Well,
cannot do
as
it.
long as-
All things right now equal, with local funding being what we would expect, as you all graciously have done in the past, this budget is sustainable.
Okay, so,
That's where we are.
so just, then I need to just say, for the record,
Right.
that I'm saying, when this comes up in the future, and if there's a deficit, that does not mean that the city's going to cover the deficit, because these are really pretty
We don't want
sizable
you to.
increases.
We don't want you to.
Okay, so in a couple years, if you can't provide that,
If you look
Then-
on here, Jesse, and see that the salary increase minimum of 6% is it's almost $1 million. So, yes, that's a priority for us, but is it more of a priority than furloughing or riffing a staff member? Absolutely not. So we could take that money that we have for raises and use it to to help wherever we need to if things turn bad.
Okay, so I felt like in good
I mean, we don't-
consciousness, I need to let you know that I don't have a crystal ball and I don't know where the city's gonna sit either. And again, you guys know I've been on the school board, so you're talking to someone that is a huge fan and supporter. I've told you before, the reason I ran for this role is to support the schools, and I wanted to
Absolutely.
see a school built. And you know you'll never find a bigger champion. But I also have to tell you that I'm concerned. These are so, the times are so unusual, and I don't want to overextend my promise to you either, because that would be doing a disservice. So as long as we all are on the same sheet of music on this, then I'm good. That's all I have to say about it. And I appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. I take my hat off to you. It's been challenging all the way around. And I will say that I have said this out loud. I am glad I'm not on the school board right now. And that is the truth.
Well, and
So-
I'm going to say ditto to what Jesse has said, and thank you all for helping to clarify this, because that was a real point that I've been struggling with, because we've been struggling with it with our own budget. We don't want to promise somebody something that we can't commit to, and we've really asked a lot of our taxpayers. We're going to ask a lot of them tonight. And to do that, we've got to have all of our house in order and our ducks in a row on this, so I appreciate all of that. What I would like to do, if we can, I know we've gone over, and we're going to take a little quick break before we go into the regular council meeting. Can we get back together end of June, beginning of July, let you all get through graduation? I'd love to talk more about the capital improvement plans, and then also maybe we can learn more about the virtual academy piece. I love the concept. I think that's great, and you guys get all the kudos in the world for doing that. That's amazing that Radford can take a leadership role in that and make that happen. I think that's right along the line. But I would like to get back together in about 2.5, 3 months and have us talk again. That way we can get another update. And I guess Jack went to go celebrate, and I'm glad he did. We'll bring him back. I appreciate all the work that he and Thompson and Littner are doing, and hopefully we'll be in really good shape at that point. Does anybody else have any other questions before we break tonight?
I do have to tell the school board one story that I think you'll appreciate, and a couple of you I served with, and so you'll be happy to hear about this. I had a young man stop at my house over the weekend, and I have to tell you, one of the hardest jobs on school board, if you're not ever on a school board, I will tell you, is when you have to see the students in closed session, because that means they have really made enough poor decisions that a larger choice has to be made about how to direct their future. And we had a young man who was, and he did tell me that I could tell you guys in private who it is, a young man that was extremely challenged to us, extremely challenging. And the guys will tell you, this will not be a surprise, but I was the bad cop every time. So they'd be like, all right, Jesse, let's see what's going to happen. So this was a young gentleman, so much potential, bright, athletic, but he could not make a good decision to save his life. And he did have a lot of turmoil in his household, so there was a lot going on with this young man. And his grades were slipping, and sometimes we'd say, well, we'll see how you're doing in 3 months or next semester. And with this young guy, I got really frustrated, and I said, we're not going to give you that long. You guys may remember this. I want to see you in 3 weeks. I want to see you in 3 weeks, because you're not going to waste the time in the classroom, and you're not going to be disruptive. I want to see you in 3 weeks. This young man come in 3 weeks later, and he was about to bust. He was like, hi, he's so excited to get my attention. He had raised his grades, and he had done a remarkable job. He did end up moving away back to another home that he had, and he stopped in this weekend to tell me what an impact that we had on his life. He's getting ready to join the Marines, and he said that if it wasn't for how we handled him, that we had accountability, but he actually knew we cared, and he took those lessons for his next couple of years when he moved back to where he had originally moved from. And he just, again, told me just what a huge impact. And then he wanted to talk to the resource officer. And so I got a hold of the resource officer because, we all know that we don't do this for the great pay. We do it because there really is a legacy that we hope to leave in one way or another. And so this young man, he wanted me to extend to everyone just a heartfelt thanks, and he's getting his life together. So.
Good.
Bravo. And I want to say, too, just to end this, the pandemic has been a horrific thing to go through. It's been a challenge. I think with the way things have kind of worked out, it's also given us some opportunities we never would have expected and that we might never have had. And so if we can make the most of our moment as we move forward, I think it's going to benefit us all for years to come. So some of the scars that we've had to endure may lead to new flourishing later. And so with that, we're going to take a 10-minute biology break, and then we'll come back for our regular council. Thank you all very much.
Am I good?
Yeah, well, let's see, you want to stay for the public hearing?
You want me to?
Yeah.